There's a very interesting article in the Financial Times today about the hopes for Nigel Farage to reform UK and make it a party fit for real power. And is this possible? And I think the answer is no, not because of inherent flaws in Nigel Farage's populist instincts or the party's agenda, but because of the systemic, structural, and physical practical barriers that reform faces. Reform UK is an ambitious project buoyed by a volatile electorate, a charismatic figurehead, whether you like him or don't, and financial backing. And however its path to power may look set, it's strewn with obstacles that go far beyond solvable issues like internal discipline, party debate preparation, and grassroots organisation. Can Farage's presentation skills, I mean, he's a superb orator. Can he be better in debate? Yes, but he can be schooled in that. But that's not going to help. And I'll try and put forward a reason why I think Reform UK is ultimately going to go the same way as the SDP and other attempts to break the two-party system. I think the two-party system is going to be broken, but not by Reform UK. I think it will be broken by the Lib Dems, who will ease in to overtake the Conservative Party as the party of opposition. Why? Because it's going to be very difficult for Labour to lose the next general election, no matter how unpopular they make themselves. And I think the Conservative Party are not up to fighting that election. And by the time we've got through, 2 years of Kemi Badenoch will be enough to destroy the Conservative Party, and the natural direction of the naysayers will be into reform. We've already seen that start to happen. And if enough people leave the Conservative Party and go into reform, the Lib Dems automatically become the party of opposition anyway. I mean, it would be extraordinary, quite extraordinary. But when you look at the figures, one of the biggest problems is the first past the post electoral system. And the UK's system is the ultimate hurdle. And it rewards concentrated support in constituencies, something Reform UK lacks. And despite polling well nationally, up to 21% in recent surveys, this vote share translates poorly into actual seats. I mean, if you look at the numbers, and I did a video on this the other day, if you look at the numbers, the Labour got just over 1 million votes, just over 9 million votes. The Conservatives got 6 million. The Lib Dems got 3 million. And Reform got 4 million. But it's the Lib Dems who are going to benefit most from the fracturing, I think, of the Conservative Party because of the first past the post system. And a party in power with as many seats as it's got, with barely not even a 3 million difference between the Conservatives and the Labour Party, to account for that huge number of seats that the Labour Party actually commands, the Labour Party isn't going to change the first past the post system because it actually benefits the Conservatives more than it benefits Labour. There's no reason on earth why Labour would agree to changing the first past the post system. And Reform UK's dispersed support condemns it to the role of spoiler, not the victor. And even with 99 projected seats under favourable conditions, Farage would fall far short of forming a government. He might be able to team up with the Lib Dems, but they wouldn't team up with him. The second issue is that the Reform UK is basically a single issue party, and it's going to struggle to escape its origins as a rebranded Brexit party. While Brexit galvanised discontent, it is no longer the political lightning rod that it once was, and the Brexit that we've been delivered is so appalling, I don't think it commands that much favour. The electorate now expects broader solutions to issues like the NHS, housing and inflation, and Reform UK's attempts to diversify its platform are undermined by its entrenched image as a protest party, a badge of irrelevance in a general election. Farage is an unparalleled campaigner, but leadership is about more than bombast. And somebody said Farage wouldn't survive a major general election. That's what he does best. So that's an absurd claim. Farage thrives on a general election. Reform leader's deputy, Richard Tice, lacks Farage's charisma and fails to energise the electorate beyond the party faithful, but he's a much better speaker in the House of Commons. Farage, meanwhile, remains a polarising figure with limited cross-party appeal, but enormous charisma. His ties to figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk may also energise his base, but they alienate moderate voters and those sceptical of populist alliances. In addition, the other reason why Reform UK is not going to be ultimately successful is its overlap with the Conservatives. So you can say, well, it's just Conservatives heavy. Why not have just become the Conservative Party? And that may well, in the end, happen. We may see a splitting of the Conservative Party, with some going to ally with the Lib Dems and some going to ally with Reform. And Reform UK's policies on immigration, tax and environmental issues largely mirror those of the hard-right Conservative faction, and this overlap stifles growth by restricting Reform's appeal to disenchanted Tory voters. While Reform UK could siphon support from a weakened Conservative Party, it lacks a unique ideological identity to build a broader coalition. No matter how much it says, oh, we're getting votes from the Labour Party, what utter rot. Successful political parties are built on robust local operations, and despite recent efforts to create branches and attract members, Reform UK lacks the deep networks and the activist base of the established parties. And there are 3 established parties. This organisational deficit undermines its ability to canvass, to mobilise, to campaign effectively at scale. And for many voters, Reform UK is simply a vehicle for venting frustration rather than something for credible governing as an alternative, a real alternative government. Its policy proposals, often framed as populist sound bites, lack the depth and the pragmatism needed to convince the electorate that it could really run the country. And the perception of Reform as an insurgent or anti-party hampers its ability to be taken seriously as a viable government. I was asked today, what are my political views? And I tried to explain them. And of course, the problem is I don't belong to any political party, so it's very difficult to fly any particular flag. I belong to the left wing of the old Conservative Party, and that no longer exists. I belong to the sort of Conservative that would have been represented by Norman St John Stevens. That party is gone. That no longer exists. It wasn't so much defeated by Mrs. Thatcher, it was defeated by time. And the party has moved to the right and left me abandoned. I don't feel that I belong to any other party. And in fact, oddly, when I talk to people in the Labour Party, I find that I'm often to the left of them. Certainly on certain policies like education, I find that I can't honestly take up their position. So I stand in the middle and I will criticise whoever. And that is my position. And I won't take prisoners. So I am doing, in many ways, the sort of things that Reform is doing. I'm just doing it from a different side. It's doing it from the far right. I'm doing it from the centre. But I don't expect to be in power, and I don't think Farage should expect to be in power simply because he's carping from the sidelines. That's all I'm doing, carping from the sidelines. And Reform UK's core base, its older, rural, predominantly male voters, is too narrow to win a majority. Its attempts to appeal to younger demographics, such as leveraging TikTok, they're unlikely to succeed in moving the electoral needle, given that under 25s comprise less than 5% of the electorate and historically have low turnout rates. Reform UK's momentum is real. Be no doubt about that, with prominent defectors like Nick Candy, Andrea Jenkins, she of the finger, as well as the infusion of millions into its coffers, the party has gained visibility. But, as Professor Ben Ansell's seat prediction model illustrates, even under favourable conditions, its potential gains fall well short of any threshold for real power, and the notion of Reform UK as a serious contender rests on an unlikely alignment of Labour collapse, Conservative implosion and voter volatility. It also rests on the assumption that the Lib Dems aren't poised to fill the gap, if any of that happens. While Nigel Farage can articulate disenchantment like no other, building a credible political party demands more than rhetoric. And it demands more than the sort of rhetoric that he's got. He is a one-trick pony who is very good at talking about one subject, but get him off that subject and he flounders and he's lost. He's brilliant on that subject. He's brilliant playing the affable man of the people. But I'm afraid there's a limit to his ability. To be a leader of a political party, as Kemi Badenoch discovers to her to her own cost, requires a strategic ability to navigate electoral systems, broaden appeal, develop coherent, pragmatic policies, project a consistent and energised character, to be the icon of the party. Reform UK has yet to demonstrate it can meet any of these challenges. For now, it remains what it's always been. Now, you could go back and you could look at why did Keir Starmer manage to achieve something that Jeremy Corbyn didn't achieve? Jeremy Corbyn energised the Labour Party, but he didn't energise the Labour Party as a party of power. He had more members of the Labour Party than Keir Starmer, but why couldn't he run the country? Why couldn't he get into number 10? Because he couldn't command, he couldn't get over that last bridge and look like a leader that the country would want. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, did that with some ease because of his position as the Director of Public Prosecutions, because of the image that he projects as somebody who is a safe pair of hands, whether he is or not. Now, if Jeremy Corbyn had come along later, I think it is very possible that he could have moved in as a successor to Keir Starmer. In the same way, Kemi Badenoch could have moved in as a successor to Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson or Liz Truss. Anybody could have been a successor to Liz Truss. But she is not capable of energising the party into number 10, just as Nigel Farage is not capable. You have to wonder whether Ed Davey is capable. I think not either. This is why I think the most likely scenario for the next general election is Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer may well be facing Ed Davey. He may well be facing a replacement for Kemi Badenoch. He will not be facing Nigel Farage. That, I think, is a certainty. But Nigel Farage's party will be inflated by a large number of Conservative defectors. The more who leave the Conservative Party, the more chance there is the Lib Dems will move in as the party of opposition.